What's up, guys? Welcome back to The Question, where you have the questions and I have the answers. And today we're going to be talking about Our Flag Means Death. I know I haven't made a video in quite a while. College is busy. I haven't been feeling very motivated. I haven't had the time. And since I've come back for summer break, I've had COVID. And once I got over COVID, my voice has been kind of and this is the first few days where I sound like myself again. I feel wholly better, so I'm like, also I just finished watching Our Flag Means Death for the third time, and I'm obsessed with it. And I've been talking to my therapist about it because it relates to my trauma, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today, is the importance of class within Our Flag Means Death. This is kind of a review, kind of a video essay. It will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen it and you're interested in watching it, maybe save this video for later. As always, remember to like, comment, share, subscribe if you're new. I make film and TV review content, as well as political and historical educational content. It honestly depends on what's going on in the world and what's happening. I already made a video about Roe v. Wade. And since it has been overturned, no new information has really come about yet. Everything I said in that video I think is still sound. If ever I am wrong or new information is added, I will make another video about it. But so if you want my opinions and my knowledge on what has happened or what was going to happen at the time, that is my last video. Without further ado, Our Flag Means Death. So for those of you who have watched Our Flag Means Death, it is at its core a gay pirate rom-com. It is surprisingly historically accurate. I mean, they reference a lot of modern things, and of course pirates were walking around wearing leather, but as far as time period and costuming goes, aside from the leather, it's pretty sound. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the importance of class and class status. And I'm talking about this because it is one of my favorite things about the show. Aside from it being not queerbaity, it's actually pretty gay, and I appreciate that. And also, it's near the end of Pride Month, so I need to make at least one Pride-related video. So a gay pirate show that's actually gay, not just queerbaiting, is awesome. But no, one of the things that I like about just life in general, which probably has to do with my trauma, is I like the tragedy in things. I like the sadness, because I feel like it's really beautiful the way that sadness and tragedy can just enter our lives. It sounds fucked up when I say it about that, but like Hozier, any of his music is what I'm talking about, the tragedy of beauty, or the beauty of tragedy. That sad longfulness within our everyday lives that just makes everything more enriching and complex. Anyway, back to Our Flag Means Death. When I first was introduced to Blackbeard, initially watching the show, I had mixed feelings about him, but because one, I thought he was going to betray Steed, and I was horrified because Steed is my idiot child. This man's never had an original thought in his life. He has exactly 0 brain cells, and I love him for it. Anyone who's going to hurt him can do so over my dead body. And so the idea that Blackbeard was going to potentially hurt Steve, I did not like that. But at the same time, I related to him on such a niche level. And that was with the episode directly after our introduction to Blackbeard, when they go onto the French ship to try and be aristocrats. The whole a rich donkey is still a donkey is something that I feel very often. That complex, almost traumatic experience of growing up poor or less than middle class is something that resonates with me. And so even though I wasn't quite 100% a fan of Blackbeard yet, that struggle and that sadness and honestly a feeling of inadequacy is something that resonated with me. But it's not just with Blackbeard, it's the entire show. Each character, especially Steed and Blackbeard, in their relationship struggle with concepts of class, especially their reactions to the upper class. And one of my favorite things to say is that Steed and Blackbeard are like inverses of each other. And in the beginning it's obvious, but the relationship with their class and with each other's class is way more complex than we originally thought. So Steed is born into luxury, and that is like his origin story. That's something we always are reminded of. That's his like, it's traumatizing for him because not only was he born into luxury, he was made to feel bad about being born into luxury by everybody else also in that luxurious position, which is interesting. You know, we have from the beginning his dad being like, you're gonna inherit everything I worked for, and you don't deserve to. You know, kind of like gaslighting him, making him feel bad for inheriting this thing that he's never had to work a day for. Which one is interesting because he could have totally made Steed actually do work. He could have disinherited Steed at any time. And the fact that he didn't and then still made him feel bad for it is a whole other thing that I could get into and I'm not going to in this video. And then of course being bullied by everybody else in the same class as him, because he didn't follow the trends of said class or because he was just out of the box. Anyway, despite being from this high class status, he doesn't really resonate with it. You know, it's something that he takes solace in as part of his identity as a pirate. You know, he's more gentleman than pirate. He really identifies with this upper class upbringing, but he's also an outsider to it. And we see that especially when he comes back to Mary in the 10th and 9th episode, is that while he never really fit in to begin with, he definitely doesn't fit in now. He's too pirate to be upper class, and he's too upper class to really be a traditional pirate. And that leaves him kind of in the middle of these worlds and an outsider to both, as neither really accept him except for Blackbeard and his wife at the end of all of episode 10. And then you get on to Blackbeard, who we've established was raised in a lower class. His mom was probably in servitude, or at least worked as a maid for upper class individuals, and that was something that he was always vying for as a kid. He'd saw people who had these fancy fabrics, who had all of these like little fancy parties and fancy lives, and he was like, well, why can't we have this? And the interesting thing though was the way that Steed's dad put it as a what you worked for versus what you didn't work for. You know, his dad was like, well, I worked for this, you didn't, and that's why it's shitty that you have this thing. Blackbeard's mom phrased it as like a divine right, or it's like God gave the riches to these people and not to us, and he must have done so for a reason. Therefore, it's our own fault we don't have these things, which, by the way, isn't true. You know, classism is still an issue we have today. But even more so, it was prevalent back in the day, and this takes place in the early 1700s, if anything. You know, before everybody's like revolts and stuff. But yeah, so not only was he raised in this lower class, you know, in a way longing for upper class status and luxuries, but also resenting it, as we see later. But also he's raised with the idea that a divine power decided he wasn't worthy for it, that he didn't deserve it. And that's something that connects the two of them, both Ed and Steed, is that they were both raised with the idea that they are not worthy, or they don't deserve luxury. They don't deserve high class status. But the fact that one was raised without it and one was raised with it creates very different people, and that's how we have Blackbeard and Steed today. And so Steed's whole journey in this show is figuring out where he fits in, figuring out himself and who his people are, because the upper class people are not his people. They've never been his people. He was raised among them, but he was never accepted by them. He's always been outside of that. But he isn't really accepted in the pirate community either, as I said before. So he has to figure out where he is, and so eventually we do this by him renouncing all of his riches to try and become a proper pirate. But just because he renounces all of his riches, he still has the upper class upbringing, he still has the connections, and he still has probably the general mannerisms. You know, he's not going to just become a bloodthirsty pirate because he gave away his fortunes. And then with Blackbeard, we have to see him reconciling and struggling with that want versus what he deems he's worthy of. But also, like, really, like, I want to say, like, it's identities. Basically, they're trying to figure out their identity, but not in a I'm gay, I'm straight way, but in a class way. Where do I fit in this class, especially at sea, where there really is no class. There is no social class the same way there is in, like, actual society, actual countries and towns. And so we introduced to Blackbeard, and he seems to take solace in the fact that he's a pirate. He takes solace in the fact that he is a criminal. He takes solace in the fact that he doesn't have luxuries, which is the opposite of Steed, who takes solace in that all these luxuries are recognizable to him. But then we see as he interacts with Steed that he really does love and he longs for these luxuries. It fascinates him. It's what he's always dreamed of as a kid. It's what he's wanted his entire life. You know, it's one thing he grew up without. But he's also uncomfortable in these situations, you know? Like, and I completely get that. I feel completely uncomfortable in situations where I'm completely out of my depth, not around people like me, you know? And it's one thing to indulge in these luxuries like by yourself. It's another thing to indulge in these luxuries around people who've lived with them your entire life. You know, it's like wearing fancy clothing and eating fancy food is different than going to a fancy party, because there are different social cues. There are ways in which different social circles act, and you could learn them to the best of your ability, but you're always going to feel on the outside because you had to learn them later. You had to be aware of you learning them versus being raised with them. Like, it's not natural to you, you know? And in a way, everybody can sense that, you know? Like, as the guy said to Blackbeard, a rich donkey is still a donkey. And that's exactly what it feels like to be raised less than, and then be thrust into life or be exposed to this, because, like, you know you're not supposed to be there, and everybody else can tell you're not supposed to be there either. Even if you can do everything right, they'll know. And that's isolating, and it's disheartening. And so that's the first time we really see Blackbeard struggle emotionally, because he's out of his depth, but also he's dealing with self-worth. He really doesn't believe that he is worthy. He feels like he has failed. He feels like everybody knows that he no longer has power in these situations. You know, they're fighting on a level that he has never before dealt with, using techniques he's never figured out. You know, like the difference between physical violence and then passive aggression. And that is how the upper class speak, is that they will wage basically psychological warfare on you to try to gain power and dignity over you. You know, they don't just behead you, they don't just stab you. They will ruin your entire life, basically. And if anything, that is more horrible than anything that Blackbeard has ever done. And where these struggles become important in the show is that it affects their relationship with each other. Because Steed is from the higher class, and Blackbeard is a bloodthirsty pirate from the lower class, and they want each other, but the things that they want are also the things that have hurt them and they're afraid of, you know? Steed is from the upper class, as I said before, and he wants to be a bloodthirsty pirate. But also, so much of his identity as a pirate is linked to being that upper class gentleman. And because of that, it makes it hard for him to connect with Blackbeard and his experiences, as we saw when Calico Jack came back, because it's so out of his depth, you know. He has a very unique way of doing things because of his background in aristocracy, and he's not as willing to partake in normal pirate-like behavior. And it kind of frightens him. Like, he's really uncomfortable with the notion. The whole idea being the whole reason he is a pirate is a highly romanticized idea of what piracy is. And ultimately, I don't think he actually wants to be a pirate. He just wanted to be free from his obligations, or free from the life that was chosen for him. He wanted to be free of aristocracy, but I don't think he actually wanted to go be a pirate adventurer. You know? Because he doesn't know enough about it. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, ideally I could go and like do this. So it's like, I want to travel the world, and like not everywhere is America. And so you get someplace and you're like, whoa, what am I doing here? I am embarrassing myself daily. I am offending the people around me, and I feel lost and alone because this isn't what I thought it was gonna be. You know, like him becoming a pirate is entirely romanticized in his own head, and now he has to actually figure out how to be an actual pirate, and that's a strong learning curve for him. And he's doing well, he's doing fairly well, but it's not at all what he thought it was going to be. And on the other hand, you have Blackbeard, who has chased aristocracy his entire life, either literally or just as a figment of his imagination. Once again, it's something he's romanticized. And then when he's actually put up with it, when he actually goes and interacts with these aristocrats, it's not what he thought it was going to be. You know, it's not just luxuries and not having to worry about food. It's not just fine summer linens and a bunch of different forks. It's constant psychological warfare. You know, you're constantly trying to prove yourself worthy to be in these spaces, despite the fact that most people, as stated in, you know, the France episode, inherit their money and are not inherently worthy. They haven't done anything to prove their worth aside from just being born into it. But in a way, that to them makes them more worthy of others. As Edward's mom said, there are people who have and there are people who don't have, and that was decided by God. We aren't those kinds of people to have things. So it's dealing with that mindset, dealing with the fact that the aristocracy reality is not at all what he expected, but also the fact that this thing that has grown up hurting him, almost traumatizing in a way to grow up, you know. Well, it is traumatizing in a way to grow up for. This thing that has basically scarred him and hurt him his entire life and is still hurting him is the very thing that he has fallen in love with, you know? And in order to be with Steed, he's going to have to get used to that uncomfortable, scary thing that he's not used to, that has regularly hurt him. And I think that is what hurts so much about and led to his breakdown in episode 10. Now, so many people think that, like, oh, he's just acting this way to, like, get one over on Izzy, or, like, it's all just, like, a fuckery or whatever. But I think it is, like, a real breakdown, you know? Like, aristocracy is something that he has been trying to get, or has been a dream of his for so long. But it continually hurts him because it's not just fancy luxuries, it's harsh realities and mean people and entitled people. And so it's something that he's been going after again and again and again, and has continually hurt him. And then he found one rich thing, Steed, that was good, you know, and it's like restored his faith in it in a way of, it's like, okay, this thing isn't gonna hurt me. You know, this thing understands me, it cares for me. And then so Steed standing him up to go to China was like the last straw, you know? It was like, yeah, if the one person I thought I could trust is just like every other rich kid, there's nothing for me in this life. And so he reverts back into what he knows, that safety net of, I'm a bloodthirsty criminal, I'm a bloodthirsty pirate, because that's what everyone suspects poor people to be. Is that dirty, criminal, like murderous person who is less than human, who is amoral, despite the fact that nothing distinguishes them than like poverty, you know? And so he reverts back to like even worse than he was in the beginning. Like he admitted he mellowed out a lot because the pirate life wasn't for him. He doesn't want that. He wants a life of luxury, despite not being in a luxurious circle. So the fact that he has reverted so far back into this idea of what a pirate is supposed to be, it's like his shield of every single thing that isn't this thing has hurt me and it will hurt me, and therefore it is the enemy, I think especially when Izzy showed him that picture, he was like, this is who you used to be and this is who you are now. It's like Steed has stripped you of everything you were and now has left you to be this like humiliated person, and I think that's also a good part of it, is that that was like his last straw of trusting and believing in his ability to have this luxurious happiness with Steed. And so Steed not being there just ended it. Well, y'all, I hope you guys enjoyed this, like, not really a review, not really an essay, like analysis, I guess, of the importance of classism and social status within Our Flag Means Death's main romance. I don't really know how I feel about the way I record these videos or the way in which I speak of them. I don't really write a script. I don't know if that's clear. I kind of just go off of how I'm feeling, what's on the top of my head. And I don't know how I feel about that. So if you have any suggestions on how I can make these cleaner, more professional looking, any suggestions, any critiques, if you guys think that I tend to ramble a lot, if you have any suggestions on how to fix that, I would greatly appreciate them. I know I haven't been on YouTube as much as I have been in the past. I'm also active on TikTok and Instagram. I'm more active on Instagram, I think, of recently. I tend to make a lot more Instagram posts than I do TikTok or YouTube videos. I think just because I don't have to talk in my Instagram posts, because I do tend to ramble, and if I can just make a good infographic, I can just be like edit it and make it look nice and pretty. But I do like making YouTube, and I do like making TikTok videos. I'm in a kind of transition phase of I'm figuring out who I am and what I want to do, and I think a hard part about transitioning in any point in your life is that you feel connected or obligated in a way to stay or retain a bit of who you were, because you feel like you're letting people down if you don't stay the same. And so another reason I'm hesitant to make YouTube videos or TikTok videos is because I made this whole kind of brand on educational, historical, political content. But as of the most recent, past few months, I've kind of strayed away from that. And while I enjoy making the videos that I do, I really like analyzing TV shows and movies. I like talking about my film theories and headcanons. I feel like I'm letting people down, or not being a good enough activist because I don't talk about these historical things as much as I used to. If you've been keeping up with my TikTok, my most recent TikTok series has been talking about the quotes I have on my phone, and I enjoy that series. But also it feels weird that I haven't been making any educational stuff, and I feel like I am not being a good enough activist when everything is happening and I'm not contributing in any way. Like, I know that's not true because I make educational Instagram posts and I still share links, I donate, I sign petitions, I share petitions, I share GoFundMes, I share information on my Instagram story. I watch, I share, I follow, I comment, I boost educational things on TikTok, but it doesn't feel like enough when I'm not explaining things myself. But the other thing is, I don't quite know what to explain anymore. You guys, I love you, but you don't really engage with my content. You don't really give me suggestions, and the whole point of the question is that you were supposed to comment questions and I would give you answers or my insights. And in the beginning, you guys did that, but you don't really do that anymore. So it's been a struggle, honestly, to come up with things to talk about. And the other issue I have with coming up with content ideas is that we live in an age where information is readily accessible and everybody has access to give their opinion. Everybody has access. Anybody can make a YouTube account, anybody can make Instagram, anybody can make TikTok, and everybody has already said most of the things that I'm going to say. You know, most people have covered the topics that I've covered, and so at some point it's like, does it really matter if I talk about these things? Because I'm not saying anything that other people haven't already said. And so I wanted to come on here and say this at the end of the video because, one, I think I owe you guys clarity. I'm almost to 30 followers, which is insane. And so if I do get 30 subscribers, I will make a 30, you know, like a little celebration video. But yeah, I just want to be honest. And I think that if I'm honest with you, you guys can give me suggestions, like what do you want to see? What do you want to hear me talk about? Is it okay that I don't do as much educational content anymore? Do you like the film videos? Yeah. So with that being said, so long and thanks for all the fish. Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.